Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm going to read to you the story of Mina, titled, They Saw Me as a Wallet with Legs. I planted a secret digital witness in my home, and what the footage showed me burned the whole family down. Continue listening to know what happened. How long does it take to realize the people you love don't see you at all? That the only thing connecting you is a transaction? My story isn't just about theft. It's about the deep, searing scar of betrayal left when I learned my own family had been secretly exploiting me for a decade. I had to do the unthinkable. I cut them off. I blocked every number. I walked away from the people who were my entire world. They called me cruel. They swore I'd regret it. But the guilt? It was nothing compared to the shock of what I had seen. The reason for their threats. The reason for their desperation. I installed a secret digital witness in my own home, and what that footage showed me was a truth so cold, so calculated. It changed the meaning of family forever. They didn't see a daughter or a sister. They saw a resource. They had a name for me, a name that confirmed their exploitation. I was nothing more than the wallet with legs. I closed that wallet, and what happened next wasn't just a breakup. It burned the whole family down. Stick around, because this story is far darker than you can possibly imagine. To understand the fire, you have to understand the fuel. And I was the fuel. From the moment I was old enough to babysit, I was the sensible one, the responsible one. That was my role, the good daughter, the one who got the high-powered job, the big downtown salary, money that should have been my freedom, but was instead earmarked. My parents were loving, but they were terrible with money. Dad was a construction worker, pushing himself physically until he couldn't. Mom was a nurse. They retired early, and almost overnight, the retirement funds dried up. I was 26, still paying off student loans, but I couldn't say no. I was terrified of being the one who let them down. My sister, Emma, 7 years younger, was the opposite, the creative, free spirit. She was charming, and because she was always in some sort of crisis, I became her primary line of credit. It wasn't just loans. It was an expectation. The moment I got my first real paycheck, it wasn't my money anymore. It was an asset the family collectively owned. I bought my house 4 years ago, a 3-bedroom, quiet neighborhood. It was the only thing I owned that was truly mine, or so I thought, because the pressure to maintain my good daughter status had turned my house into a vault they felt entitled to raid. The ATM didn't become permanent all at once. It was a slow, creeping erosion of my boundaries. We can pinpoint the moment the relationship flipped from helping out to codependency on a corporate scale. The tipping point was 2014. Dad had a bad construction injury that year. They lost stability. Suddenly, the mortgage wasn't the biggest bill I paid. I was covering their utilities, their groceries, the financial baseline just to keep them afloat. But then came Emma and her charming, chronically underemployed husband, Tyler. I was paying Emma and Tyler's rent. I was paying for 4 adults, plus myself. A typical month for me looked less like a budget and more like a charity foundation for my own family. And it escalated every year. They never tried to contribute more. They just learned to ask for more. Look at the numbers. Over 10 years, I calculated that I spent nearly $500,000 keeping them solvent. That is a second retirement fund. That's a decade of self-sacrifice. And yet, when the bills were paid, the expectation didn't stop there. It began to bleed into my personal space, my property, my things. The unspoken rule was always, Mina has more, so she owes us. And it was a debt that could never be repaid. I had established the financial baseline for their entire life. But soon, that wouldn't be enough. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my possessions. They wanted my life. And I was about to find out exactly how far they were willing to go to take it. They were coming for more, and I was completely blind until I hit play. The financial bleeding wasn't enough for them. Once they got comfortable relying on my salary for their basic survival, they started demanding it for their lifestyle. Emma's requests stopped being about rent and started being about vanity and luxury. It was always, Mina, Tyler, and I need to try that new 5-star restaurant. Or, Mina, I just have to get my hair done at that $300 salon before the wedding. When she needed a down payment for a luxury trip with friends, I paid it. My reward? A passive, almost bored acceptance. No real gratitude, just the assumption that the ATM was always open. The disrespect wasn't subtle anymore. It became palpable. I remember lending Emma a new, expensive silk blouse. A week later, she returned it, carelessly balled up, with a faint red wine stain on the collar. When I pointed it out, she just shrugged, saying, "Oh, oops. You have so many nice things. I figured you would notice." It was a small moment, but it felt like a slap. It told me she didn't value my property because she didn't value my effort. This entitlement bled into their perception of my home. The rare times they visited, they'd wander. Emma would open my designer perfume cabinet, smelling bottles, always asking, "Can I just use a squirt?" Tyler would linger by my electronics. It wasn't a curiosity. It felt like inventory management. I knew they felt I had too much. I knew they thought I was selfish for owning things they couldn't afford. What I didn't know was that they were already transitioning from simple requests to full-blown theft. The change was insidious. It started about 2 months ago. I was dressing for a corporate gala and went for my favorite silver Prada handbag. I had spent far too much on it, but I loved it. It wasn't there. I tore through my closet. Every corner, every box. Nothing. I called Emma, of course. She sounded genuinely offended. "Mina, why would you even ask that?" I would remember a Prada bag. "You must have misplaced it." I felt crazy. A few weeks later, the anxiety turned into dread. I was organizing my home office, the one place I considered sacred. I opened the desk drawer where I kept my grandfather's watch. It wasn't a Rolex, but it was Swiss-made and priceless to me, a college graduation gift from my grandparents, both now gone. The box was empty. I felt the air leave my lungs. Once, it's an accident. Twice, it's a coincidence. But this was a pattern. My coffee mug moved. Throw pillows shifted. The silver handbag. The watch. Things that held deep sentimental or financial value. It wasn't a neighborhood thief breaking a window. This was someone with a key, someone who knew my schedule. The suspicion was cold, solid, and terrifying. Could my own family be robbing me? I wrestled with that question for days. If I confronted them without proof, my mother would destroy me. She would call me hysterical, unstable. I would lose my family forever, and the thieves would walk free. I couldn't risk it. The decision to install the cameras wasn't about protecting myself from strangers anymore. It was about confirming a private, cold suspicion that was tearing my psyche apart. Before we move on, I want to know what you would have done in my position. Would you have confronted them immediately, risking the accusation of being crazy? Or would you have secretly tried to get proof? Leave a comment below right now and let me know. I called a company my coworker recommended, Safeguard Security. I told the technician I needed perimeter and internal coverage due to neighborhood break-ins. I watched him install the 8 small, discrete cameras, living room, kitchen, the main hall, and my home office. Each one connected to the cloud, accessible only by my phone. My digital witness was born. The process felt deeply wrong, almost criminal. I felt like the betrayer, not them. I was invading their privacy, even though they were the ones potentially invading my home. Please, God, let me be wrong. Let this whole thing be a waste of money. Let me find that watch hidden under a sock.
Let me find a handbag in the attic.
Let me just be exhausted and paranoid. That hope, that desperate plea for my family's innocence, is the only thing that got me through the installation. I gave the technician my card, signed the contract, and watched the main feed populate on my phone. The house was silent, empty, and waiting. I waited 2 days. Nothing. My anxiety began to ease. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was unstable, just like my mother always subtly implied when I challenged Emma. I was almost ready to delete the app and accept the loss as carelessness. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:47 p.m., a notification popped up on my work computer screen. Motion detected. Front door. I was in a quarterly budget meeting. My heart seized. I opened the app, my hand shaking so hard I nearly dropped my mouse. I leaned into the screen, praying for a stranger, praying for a burglar. But I recognized the key turning in the lock. And I recognized the faces of the 2 people who walked into my house like they owned it. It was Emma and Tyler, and they were holding empty bags. I was frozen. That notification, motion detected, front door, had led me to the digital truth. I leaned into the screen, watching myself from above, a phantom in my own life. I saw my sister, Emma, and Tyler using their spare key. They didn't sneak in. They didn't creep. They walked in like they owned the place. And in their minds, they did. The arrogance was breathtaking. The footage wasn't blurry or dark. It was crystal clear. The timestamp, 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, was a brutal reminder that they had calculated this move around my work schedule. They knew I was in a budget meeting. They knew I was trapped. I watched Emma go straight to my bedroom closet. She pulled out the silver Prada handbag, held it up, and posed. She was smiling, laughing, waiting for Tyler's approval. They were shopping. They were treating my life, my hard-earned money, like a free boutique. I watched her go to my dresser, pick up my jewelry box, and select pieces, showing them to Tyler like a sales clerk. She wasn't stealing. She was gathering resources for her life. My life. I scrolled back. My hands were shaking. I found the footage from the day the watch went missing. There it was, Emma opening the home office desk drawer, pulling out the box, admiring the Swiss timepiece, and then coolly dropping it into her purse. Another time, my good bottle of wine gone. Expensive electronics gone. 12 incidents documented in staggering detail. 12 acts of calculated betrayal. The total value exceeded $10,000. But the actual cost, the destruction of my trust, was infinite. I spent the next hour documenting every single frame. I wasn't weeping. The sadness was gone, replaced by a terrible, cold clarity. I knew what I had to do, but first I needed to look them in the eyes one last time. I invited them over for dinner 2 nights later. Pasta. I watched them closely. They were completely at ease, entirely unaware of the digital witness hovering silently above us. Emma's eyes lingered on my new laptop bag, and I felt a fresh wave of nausea. Halfway through the meal, I dropped the bomb. Some of my things have gone missing. My silver handbag, my grandmother's watch, some other stuff. Emma paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. She recovered quickly. Oh, Mina, you're always misplacing things. You work too much, you're probably just tired. It was the same old gaslighting, the same attempt to dismiss me as hysterical. I slammed my fist on the table. They both jumped. I know it was you. I know you've been coming here and taking my things. Tyler actually laughed. That smug, arrogant sound was the final straw. You got any proof of that? Because that's a serious accusation, Mina. I didn't dignify that with a response. I gave them my ultimatum. I want everything back. Everything you took, or I'm calling the police. You have 1 week. They looked at each other, and then they did the thing that finally broke me. They burst out laughing. You're going to call the police on your own sister?
Please.
You won't do that. Besides, so what if we took a few things? You can afford it. You should have offered us more money anyway. You know we're struggling. I knew they would never understand. They were so steeped in entitlement, they truly believed they deserved my property. I told them to get out. They left still laughing, Tyler yelling that I needed to chill out. I stood there, trembling, knowing that laughter was the end of our relationship. The moment they were gone, I called my mother, Linda. I tried to make her my ally, my confidant. Mom, Emma and Tyler have been stealing from me. I have it all on video. There was silence. Then, a voice I barely recognized, cold, hard, and utterly final. You will not involve the police in family business. Your sister makes less money than you. You flaunt all these expensive things. Can you blame her for being tempted? I couldn't breathe. My own mother, defending theft, defending the violation of my home. Are you seriously defending crime right now? It's not a crime. And if you go to the police, your father and I will cut you off completely. No contact. Is that what you want? She hung up on me. That threat, that ultimate rejection, was the final liberation. She had chosen the thief. I was finally free to choose myself. I edited the footage into a single, devastating video. I sent it to Emma, Tyler, and my parents. Return everything or pay me $10,000. You have 1 week. My phone exploded with threats and desperate calls. I blocked them all temporarily. I was done negotiating with terrorists. A week later, day 7. No items returned. No apology. I drove to the police station. I gave the officer the video evidence. 3 hours later, as I was making dinner, the pounding started. It was my mother and father. Mina, open this door. They arrested Emma and Tyler. How could you? They are thieves. Thieves get arrested. $10,000. It's restitution. Your choice. The payment arrived. $10,000 from my parents' account. They chose to buy their way out of consequences. I withdrew the police complaint. The charges were dropped, but the transaction was complete. The trust was destroyed. I went home and blocked every single one of them. The family was officially and completely cut off. The digital witness had done its job, but the silence I created was about to be broken by the ultimate threat to my new freedom. The police withdrawal was purely transactional. The $10,000 paid for Emma and Tyler's freedom from jail, not for my forgiveness. The day after I completely cut them off, a profound silence descended on my life. It was a golden, beautiful peace, but it was heavy. Sometimes, in the quiet, the old, "Good daughter," guilt would whisper, "You went too far. They're your family." That's when Aunt Patricia became my reluctant informant. I didn't ask for updates, but she called. She provided the necessary brutal reality that silenced my guilt. The struggle report, as I mentally filed it. Emma and Tyler were trapped in my parents' 3-bedroom house, creating nonstop friction. Tyler was still unemployed, blaming me for ruining his job prospects. And my parents, they were paying the price for their choice. Mom, the former nurse, was working part-time at a local grocery store. Dad, the retired construction worker, was hustling for odd handyman jobs. They were in their 70s. They were scrambling because the ATM had closed. But here's the thing that killed the guilt. My mother wasn't telling anyone the whole truth. She was telling the family I was having a mental breakdown over a few lost items, using their financial crisis to garner sympathy. They were still managing the narrative, protecting the thief, and vilifying the victim. The betrayal wasn't just about the money, it was about the character assassination. But their next move proved they still hadn't learned a thing about respect. They only knew one way to deal with me: demand or deceive. The first direct contact came late one evening. A frantic, desperate pounding on the front door. I recognized the frantic yelling. My father. I didn't open it. I stood behind the door, strong and silent. The power had shifted. They eventually left. But the next morning, I found a box taped to my doorstep. No note, but I recognized my mother's careful packing. Inside was a partial repayment, the silver Prada handbag, my grandmother's watch, a few pieces of minor jewelry, maybe a quarter of the stolen goods, a token apology, a down payment on getting the wallet back online. I picked up the watch, feeling the weight of the silver in my hand. It was beautiful, but it felt tainted. I wanted to call them. I wanted the cycle to end, but I stopped. I didn't want the stuff back. I wanted the acknowledgement. I wanted to hear them say, "We betrayed your trust. We called you crazy, and we chose the thief." I knew that was a language they couldn't speak. That day, I went to my therapist. She gave me the words I needed. "Mina, you were the parentified child. Your job was to take care of them. Now your job is to take care of you. Love doesn't mean letting people hurt you." She reinforced the boundary. The items went into a safe. The door remained locked. The wallet was under new management. But the shareholders, my parents, were about to stage one last, desperate intervention. I had established my home as off-limits. They knew I wouldn't open the door. So they went for the ultimate public shaming. They went to my sanctuary, my workplace. I was deep in an earnings report when my internal office line rang. It was security. My blood ran cold. They were trying to use my professional image, my career, as leverage. I knew exactly what they wanted. A scene, a breakdown, a public act of hysteria that would force me to cave. Tell her I'm not available. Tell her she can wait all day. But she waited. She waited for nearly an hour. She was playing the desperate mother card, trying to use the spectacle to force me to break my boundary. The security guard called back. "She's still here, ma'am. She says she has something urgent for you." I walked to my window and looked down at the lobby. I saw my mother standing there, a weary, desperate look on her face. For a moment, the guilt slammed into me. Then I remembered Emma laughing. I remembered my mother defending a crime. I remembered the years of exploitation. I don't care if she's my mother. If she is not gone in 10 minutes, you call the police for trespassing. I hung up. 10 minutes later, security confirmed she had left. I immediately changed my emergency contact at work to a coworker, Jessica. The boundary was set. The wallet was not just closed. It was under new, iron-fisted ownership. I had chosen myself. I had won the war. But the battle I won was just the fight over pocket change. The real, catastrophic betrayal. The final secret that would reveal the true scale of their entitlement was still buried, waiting to be unearthed. The war for the wallet was over, and I had won. But winning meant building a new life, a new identity, without the burden of their expectations. It was quiet. It was peaceful. I had time for self-care, for friends, for myself, and eventually, time for dating. I started seeing a man named Marcus. He was kind, he paid for his own meals, and he never, not once, mentioned his financial situation. It was a profound relief to be seen as a person, not a resource. Sometimes, in the quiet of my home, the guilt would still creep in. I'd remember teaching Emma how to ride a bike, or my dad helping me with math homework. Good memories. But then I'd remember the footage. I'd remember Emma's laugh as she stole my grandmother's watch. The guilt would shrivel up and disappear. I changed my mindset. The core message became clear. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their acknowledgement. The old Mina, the one who sacrificed her sanity to maintain the peace, was gone. The new Mina, the one who demands respect and asserts boundaries, was here to stay. My self-worth wasn't tied to the financial support I could give. I had secured my home, my peace, and my career. But there was one last piece of unfinished business, one last bit of security I needed to claim that would ultimately reveal the true, shocking scale of their years-long entitlement. I was updating my financial records when I came across a small file from my grandfather's estate, a tiny reminder of my inheritance. When he passed, he left me a few bond certificates and some antique jewelry, nothing flashy, but deeply sentimental, stored in a safe deposit box at my bank. I hadn't thought about it in years, but I realized I couldn't risk leaving anything vulnerable. I called the bank to confirm the key code and arrange an appointment. Yes, I'm calling about safe deposit box 447. I just need to verify the key is still active. One moment. Yes, Ms. Mina. The box is currently empty. It was accessed and surrendered approximately 2 years ago. Empty? Surrendered? I stammered. That's impossible. I haven't been to that bank in years. Only I have the key. Our records show that the primary key, which you held, was used 2 years ago, and the contents were removed. There was a signed withdrawal slip, signed by Linda R. Linda R. My mother. She must have still had the original spare key I gave them years ago for emergencies. But the signature? My grandfather's inheritance, the bonds, the antique gold, gone. I had been fighting over a $10,000 handbag, but the total value of that box was well over $50,000. And she had taken it 2 years ago, long before the petty theft even began. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It wasn't about being tempted. It was calculated, long-term grand larceny. The wallet with legs wasn't just being exploited for monthly bills. It was being drained of its entire savings and inheritance, systematically, by my own parents. The truth hit me with crushing force. The theft of the watch was just a symptom. The missing safe deposit box was the disease. The $10,000 they paid to save Emma was pocket change to them. They didn't just want my new money. They took my past. My mother hadn't just chosen the thief. She was the mastermind behind the biggest betrayal of all. And the question remains, where did all that money go? Where did my inheritance really go? I won the battle for my peace, but the war for the truth had just begun. What did you think of my mother's ultimate betrayal? Did you suspect the safe deposit box was empty? Let me know in the comments if you want me to pursue legal action against my mother, or if I should just walk away from this final devastation. You've been with me for a while. You've witnessed the ultimate betrayal, and you've seen me find the strength to choose myself. I didn't just lose $10,000. I lost the people I thought were my bedrock. And now, I've found the truth about the $50,000 inheritance they stole years ago. If my story, if my fight to close the wallet with legs and reclaim my life, meant anything to you, if it gave you even one moment of courage to set your own boundaries, then please hit the like button right now. Every single like is a vote for self-worth over exploitation. It tells me that standing up to betrayal, no matter how hard, is always the right choice. Thank you for listening to my truth. Now, tell me yours. Was it worth losing my family to gain my self-respect? Let me know in the comments.